Dostoevsky didn't arrive in a classroom. He arrived in the middle of a spiritual collapse. Through silence, exhaustion, and the dull hum of a blinking cursor, there was someone, a writer perhaps, lost in the fog of uncertainty, jobless, tired, unsure whether anything they created even mattered. It was then that a voice emerged, not loud, but piercing. A question from the brothers Karamazov lodged itself like a thorn in their chest. Can one be a saint while living among men? That's what Dostoevsky does. He doesn't answer, he confronts. He throws people into fire and dares them to emerge asking better questions. This is not an analysis, it's a confession, spoken through someone who had fractured faith, unfulfilled ambitions, and a desperate longing to understand both the world and themselves. Somehow, a 19th century Russian and an anime adaptation knew them better than most people ever had. To be too conscious is an illness, a real, thorough-going illness. Notes from Underground. Dostoevsky didn't write saints. He wrote contradictions. His characters were sinners yearning for redemption, thinkers drowning in their thoughts. Raskolnikov murdered, then begged for forgiveness. Ivan Karamazov questioned God with more honesty than most believers ever dared. What made Dostoevsky different wasn't just the depth, it was the intimacy. His characters didn't perform, they bled. They suffered not for plot, but because they were people, real people, people broken by the burden of being alive. For someone adrift in a world of curated perfection and dopamine-fueled scrolling, Dostoevsky's world felt like rebellion, a reminder that being human isn't a branding exercise. It's a raw, terrifying thing. Maybe that's why his work struck a chord with the writer. They didn't feel curated. They felt like the kind of mess Dostoevsky would have written. Twice, they tried to improve their academic results and failed. Job applications vanished into the void. Rejection became routine, a dull ache rather than a surprise. Even the one job they did get came only through a connection. The pattern reinforced something cruel. Man only likes to count his troubles. He doesn't calculate his happiness. Notes from Underground. There were days when the writer sent out dozens of applications and received only silence. Days when they looked at admired artists and felt only envy. Days when they stared at their own work and wondered, is this honest, or is it just ambition in disguise? Beksinski once said he wanted to paint as if photographing dreams. Dostoevsky did the inverse. He interrogated nightmares. This artist, still anonymous to the world, had once started drawing out of envy. A friend, no longer close, had extraordinary talent. The urge to catch up, maybe even surpass, became the spark. They copied art, fan art mostly, but it never felt like theirs. They entered competitions and lost, tried creating something original, and felt ashamed. The question haunted them. Is it my standards that are crushing me, or am I simply not good enough? Yet, despite the pain, they kept going. because they loved art, loved Beksinski, loved manga. And when they wrote, they longed to reach something real. But fear stood in the way. Fear of saying nothing meaningful. Fear that their doubt disqualified them. Still, Dostoevsky showed another way. He thrived in doubt. He didn't hide his contradictions. He transformed them. His lesson? Art isn't about confidence. It's about confrontation with oneself, with the world, with the divine, even if one no longer believes. Lying to ourselves is more deeply ingrained than lying to others. The Brothers Karamazov. When Bungo Stray Dogs introduced Fyodor Dostoevsky as a villain, the writer laughed and then listened, because even animated, something rang true. In Bungo, Fyodor is intellect without empathy, a mind divorced from soul. And that was Dostoevsky's fear too. That logic could become tyranny, that evil could masquerade as reason. We live in an age obsessed with order and efficiency. But Dostoevsky knew that humanity is found in the mess, in contradiction, not clarity. The writer hadn't published anything, but they had written stories, tried turning them into manga. Still, they feared they lacked something essential: connection. Now with AI spitting out stories on demand, they questioned whether their voice even mattered. But storytelling was how they connected, how they understood others, how they translated their own pain. And somehow, an anime villain quoting Dostoevsky felt more sincere than any critic ever had. The more I love humanity in general, the less I love man in particular. The Brothers Karamazov. Raised in a Christian home, the writer had known the scriptures, maybe not the hymns, but some of the prayers. What they didn't know was how to process pain, their own, the world's. So they drifted, first into silence, then into agnosticism. But Dostoevsky never let go of the storm. He didn't preach. He wrestled. In The Brothers Karamazov, Ivan refuses to accept a world where children suffer, even if God exists. That resonated deeply. To this day, the writer remains in that storm. No answers, only questions. But Dostoevsky taught that doubt isn't the end of faith. It's the beginning of something real. It is not as a child that I believe and confess Jesus Christ. My Hosanna is born of a furnace of doubt. The Brothers Karamazov. To create is to wrestle. With meaning, with fear, with the impulse to remain silent. Dostoevsky didn't write to escape. He wrote to confront. And that's what the writer hopes to do. Not to be admired, but to offer stories that bleed. Stories that whisper to strangers across time. I've been there. You're not alone. I plan to make a video about Dante next. Another haunted soul who descended into darkness, only to return with a story. Maybe that's what the writer's path is too. To descend, to write their way back up. The mastery of human existence lies not in just staying alive, but in finding something to live for. The Brothers Karamazov. Dostoevsky didn't solve any problems. He just gave them a name. He showed that suffering isn't the enemy of art. It's wellspring. That imperfection is not a flaw. It's a sign of life. In a world that demands clarity, Dostoevsky whispers something different. Embrace the blur. Faith, doubt, art, pain. It's all tangled. It always was. But maybe that's the point. Because to be human is to be broken and still choose to create. Pain and suffering are always inevitable for a large intelligence and a deep heart, crime and punishment. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and comment down below which of Fyodor Dostoevsky's works resonate with you. And remember, thank you for giving me your time today. Peace.